Yeah, this is what we're looking for. Just listen to this. I find sensations do not depend on my will or upon myself. I often get them even if I do not wish. For instance, I now feel heat willy-nilly, and so this sensation or idea of heat comes to me from an object other than myself, from the heat of the fire I am sitting over. That was Rene Descartes of I Think Therefore I Am fame, noting that sensations, like a breeze from a vent, happen without us actually choosing to feel them. I was reminded of it because of, well, memory, which functions the same way at times. Let me grab another one for that. Here, it's in this one. But in his mind, a cool wind started up and blew out of the ventilator grill at home, softly chilling his face. That's a description from Fahrenheit 451, of the main character remembering the illegal books he has stashed at home. It's a great line, foreshadowing the hiding place, one which is behind a flimsy barrier, just like the character himself is holding back but about to break, while also mirroring the feeling of anxiety to the chill of a breeze, both being discomfort against one's will. Not that I knew any of this when tasked with reading the book in high school. I was too busy ignoring every important decision in my life to play a military shooter all night, pretty much resigned to live a life I didn't actually enjoy. I clearly didn't choose to study that line, yet for years it would slip back into consciousness whenever the AC kicked on. I think it's because even though I didn't choose it, like my body regulating temperature, some part of me which was always there but that I didn't know how to express yet, recognized it and pulled it behind the vent. It did so again and again over the years, with Final Fantasy X and Psychopaths and Bentham and Kant, and pulling those little bits of philosophy behind the vent until, just as in 451, it burst forth against my will. I began to study these stories, these philosophies, until now, some 10 years later, I no longer feel the need to drink each night away to be okay with myself. Aware of my true self, I can finally begin to choose a life I enjoy, and it all started because there were stories willing not just to entertain me, but to make me uncomfortable while they entertained me. Since 2021, there have been so many book banning attempts in the US that just this time period has its own Wikipedia article. It's 4,066 reported at the time of writing. And that's not the number of books, that's the number of attempts. Some contain tens or hundreds of titles. History has shown us that time and time again, after books comes music, art, movies, and TV. Let them ban books, and they'll get used to banning everything. Ban Final Fantasy X for disparaging religion. Ban Psychopaths for showing violence. Ban Kant and Bentham because they contradict each other, and that can be kind of confusing. Suddenly, you do all that, and you've banned me as well. Without those works, I'd never have become the person I was meant to be and love being. Each piece of banned media is an attempt not to limit just what we see or hear, but what we think and feel, to limit who we are. So today we're looking at worlds with banned media to understand why. Why do they ban it? And why is the thing they fear most exactly what society needs more of? Fahrenheit 451 is dystopian parody. Bradbury in league with Huxley and Orwell to exaggerate our fears into comical yet terrifying form. The average citizen in its world is in a stimulative stupor. They exist mostly in the parlor, rooms where the walls are televisions and the characters act out pointless, mundane stories, pausing for a moment so the audience can read a line or two and become one of the family. When they leave this room, they put in their seashells, earbuds that continue to blast them with the voices of others from dawn to dusk. And when they do go out, they careen down the highway at 100 miles per hour, engine roaring so loud that conversation is impossible as they speed from game to game, show to show. People talk so little anymore that Mildred, the main character Montauk's wife, doesn't even hear him but just reads his lips through all the noise, only ceasing when her friends come over and they talk about how everything is so swell. And Montag himself is one of them at the start, serving dutifully as a firefighter, the frontline workers who protect loyal citizens from The horror of books. When one is found, they burn it, the house, and if they resist, the owner, all alike. It's a purpose he never questions. After all, as the book begins, it was a pleasure to burn. But then there's Clarice. By nothing more than her existence, she challenges this world, meeting Montag on the liminal streets where no one exists since they aren't meant for people. Picking flowers and catching rain on her tongue, she lacks the distraction he's used to, and so in sharing nothing more than simple, undistracted observations, she reveals a world-changing principle. Montag's perspective is not the only perspective. Bet I know something else you don't. There's dew on the grass in the morning. He suddenly couldn't remember if he'd known this or not, and it made him quite irritable. His irritation is because of how much this simple statement unlocks, showing that someone knew what he didn't. Before, he knew everything. Sure, people watched different shows, worked different jobs, they had differences, but no meaningful ones. As the fire chief, Beatty, remarks, give the people contests they win by remembering more words to popular songs, or the names of state capitals, or how much corn Iowa grew last year. Cram them full of non-combustible data, chock them so damn full of facts that they feel stuffed, but absolutely brilliant with information. And then they'll feel their thinking, they'll get a sense of motion without moving. The only differences they are allowed to have in knowledge are pointless. Things that, if someone told you, would reveal nothing truly new, nothing unique to them, just that they might have had the TV on at a different time. Everything emerges from the same point, and so there is no argument, since you can't argue without a side to defend. And with no discovery, with nothing important to share, human experience feels universal. Nothing another person has said has ever changed his life. So how could they know what he doesn't? It's blissful ignorance. As Beatty continues, if you don't want a man unhappy politically, then don't give him two sides to a question to worry him. Give him one. Better yet, give him none. But Clarice pointing out the dew, that's not something from a different channel of the same source. That's something entirely different. That's something that Montag never had a chance to learn because he never even knew to look down, to stop for a moment and just exist. She isn't living a different flavor of the same life. She is living an entirely new one. Suddenly, sides exist and so does argumentation, as the pair sometimes get angry with each other. The concept of right and wrong springs forward, of knowing and unknowing, and the potential for every single person to know or not know, to be right or wrong follows suit. The world multiplies endlessly, 10, 100, 1,000, into the billions with the number of lives. If you have a perspective which is unique, so can they. This is why, despite challenging him, the feeling Clarice gives Montag is like a mirror to her face. How rarely did other people's faces take of you and throw back at you your own expression? The contrast provides, well, more to discover. One is better defined as half of two. His irritation is because of this, that the second 1 and 2 exist, so does all of math just by adding those together. The guarantee of blissful ignorance is wiped away, replaced with the slow task of happiness, of running through all the options to find which ones are right for them. And this is exactly why their society is so fast-paced and shallow, because through constant distraction, you prevent the question from arising and spawning the rest. You fill their eyes and ears, drown out all of the silence of life so that there's never truly a moment to think. Sure, they have leisure time, watching TV and driving, but the TV blasts with colors and shapes, and the car goes 100 miles an hour, so you have to be active the whole time. Nothing allows for introspection. The zipper just places the button, and a man lacks just that much time to think while dressing at dawn, a philosophical hour, and thus a melancholy hour. This means that the people will never know themselves, but does that really matter? If the goal of society is happiness, a principle dating way back to ancient times, do we really care about the method? If Mildred and her friends call everything swell, then to them it must be. Their world is perfect. And what does unhappiness on the road to true happiness do for people but spread like a plague? When Montag, having confessed to Mildred about his collection, breaks out a book of poetry and holds her and all of her friends hostage with it, forcing them to listen to something even he doesn't understand, all it leads to is one of them crying at the words and not knowing why, just like he doesn't. When he questions his purpose with the other firemen, he interrupts their game, places them further from the thing they enjoy. Hell, even his own irritation with Clarice, with the catchy advertisements on the subway that now drive him mad. His quest takes a world of perfect simulation and makes it torture. And it all emerges from the most simple thing, from why. As Socrates showed to many people in his dialogues, why leaves a human with less than ever, less knowledge and less joy, which culminated in the man's own abandonment and execution. To know everything is to be aware of knowing nothing else. This is why Beatty, recognizing Montag's suspicious behavior from his own past, goes to his house when he calls in sick, trying to talk him out of this quest. After all, he embarked on the same path in his past and only came out of it feeling lost and sad like the man now before him, but from how much he read, also grasping a fundamental truth. It isn't just the start at which one feels lost. It's the whole time. I've had to read a few in my time to know what I was about, and the books say nothing. Nothing you can teach or believe. They're about non-existent people, figments of imagination if they're fiction. And if they're non-fiction, it's worse. One professor calling another an idiot, one philosopher screaming down another's gullet. You come away lost. Combing through the works of author after author, he found between them all, and sometimes even between themselves, endless contradiction, questions answered only with more questions, endless, bitter arguments. He put in a lot of effort, as he shows an ability to quote an extensive library, but can also himself counter each one just the same. So what was the point? What result did it lead to? None. This is why he believes in their society, that if fulfillment doesn't exist even with the effort, why should the effort be put in? Not everyone born free and equal, as the Constitution says, but everyone made equal. Each man the image of every other. Then all are happy, for there are no mountains to make them cower, to judge themselves against. But the issue is that we can't actually forget ourselves. As everyone in the book reveals, we can't help but find ourselves through conflict with the world. Montag doesn't only start taking books once Clarice shows him a different perspective. He's built up an entire stash in the ventilator at home, long before he even knew why, while it was still a pleasure to burn. As he describes, once conscious of it on one of their fire calls, it's as if his hands have moved on their own, wrapping the book under his jacket before he could even decide to have done it. Something within him is calling for this, calling for the chance to let that girl fall and have a self pour forth. Their society may distract, but distraction is not forgetting. For something to be avoided, it must be known of. And this is Montag, the ideal citizen, a frontline defender of their values. If he is breaking the law without even recognizing his own actions, how many others are doing the same? It's why this society, entirely in the background, is plagued by murder. I'm afraid of children my own age. They kill each other. 6 of my friends have been shot in the last year alone. 10 of them died in car wrecks. I'm afraid of them, and they don't like me because I'm afraid. And all of this is done with no investigation afterwards. It shares a reason with why Mildred is telling Montag to take the car out to the country and run over some dogs and rabbits to get his odd feeling out. This struggle to kill something else is the most basic, raw form of comparison which can never be escaped. Life ends. If you kill someone else, you are alive and they are not, and that is a small definition of you. No matter what, we will transgress on what is allowed simply because restriction implies freedom. The conflict is inherent. The only choice is whether we are conscious of it or not. And this is why Beatty, despite so vigorously defending their society, is the one who acts the most against it without ever knowing. His actions reveal the point of knowledge, the secret we can't help but express even if we fail to comprehend it. He says he's doing this all to bring Montag back into the fold. But when the latter does return to work from calling out sick, the former almost berates him with quotes from literature. Beatty recounts a dream he had of the two, arguing back and forth. Montag quotes something profound from literature, but Beatty counters it with a contrary statement of the same weight, exchanging mental blows over and over to no result but frustration. He thinks it's toying with prey, as they've already got a call to burn Montag's house. It's just a spot of fun, smiling large as he's driving them there, waiting to see the look on his friend's face when it's revealed. But why is it fun? If he was truly bought into the ideals of this society, avoiding that moment of becoming, why would he wait? Why wouldn't he go at the first sign? Why would he quote literature in front of the other men? Why would he know so much from it? He's allowing the danger to exist, to simmer for a moment, to use all of that reading. He doesn't love this world. He hates it. His dream reveals the point, the conflict. Them going back and forth, throwing supposedly meaningful statements at each other. It's not unlike the parlor walls, especially in leaving them with no answer either way. But instead of drowning out the silence alone, it fills it together. It takes two people who hate the silence, as we all do, and it gives them substance, the stakes of right and wrong leading to real emotions, to real consequences, wasted energy, and exhaustion. It leaves them wanting more, reaching for extra fuel for the fire, turning the silence into something almost productive, a reason to keep filling it instead of doing so just because. It forces us to solidify ourselves against the others again and again and again. To borrow from psychopaths, I don't think the important thing was the final verdict of good or evil. I feel like it was to think about yourself, agonize over it, and accept it. Beatty toys with Montag because this is what he wants, to have silence filled, not drowned out. If he can break through to this man, who he knows has spent a night reading, if he can challenge him and be proven wrong, then he can know that part of himself is truly unique. He can know that value does exist in this world. And so this is his ultimatum, as when they arrive at Montag's house to burn it, he has the man perform the job himself. It's another test, but one which leaves a criminal with the weapon, and Beatty keeps pushing, prodding, threatening the man with the power to kill him, and when that man finally does feel cornered enough to snap, the other only smiles and stands still when the trigger is pulled. As Montag realizes, Beatty wanted to die. The man had a sort of foolproof strategy. He either gets what he wants if Montag actually awakens, pushing him back mentally, but even if not, a physical reaction works just as well. If Montag kills him in service of protecting his own life which is now all about books and their value, then that is how much they're worth. They're worth murder. They're worth running from the mechanical hound. They're worth all of his efforts to escape this city. Driven forward by his ideals, Montag shows Beatty what he wants either way. That somewhere in the books there is something worth taking something else to preserve, even if he doesn't know what it is yet. Beatty tried to be the pillar of their society, brushed up against everything it said was evil and came back to fight it, and even he couldn't resist the pull towards this conflict deep down. All he did was subconsciously use his position to seek it out still. If even he can't resist, who can? Ignorance is a failed method. We must confront the conflict head on. So there are two truths. It is uncomfortable. Life is silent, and that silence is terrifying. Most of our days are spent walking a careful tightrope between ignoring it and filling it, trying to do the latter, but in fear of losing the former, never fully committing. But at the same time, we've just shown that being ignorant to it is nothing more than the least effective version of the only path we have. So do we want to run each other down in our cars unconsciously, or debate the classics consciously? That is really our only choice. If we are aware of the conflict and its necessity, we can control it. It only turns into violence when we believe we have an answer, which ignoring it simulates. This is why Montag, having escaped the city after killing Beatty, watches it be leveled in no more than a second, consumed in nuclear hellfire. Throughout the book, the signs were there, the jets flying overhead and the rumblings of war, but that was uncomfortable, so the people never looked. They ignored it, let it grow and fester. After all, the war is countries away with less developed nations, isn't it? It'll never hurt us. They refused 1 ounce of pain right now, 1 protest or article, in exchange for 1,000 tons in the future. A flash and then gone. But would this instant society have had it any other way? Some things are meant to be painful so they are avoided. Killing a man must be painful, or else we let him die without a thought. We either read, watch, listen, debate, or we shoot, bomb, and burn. That's what society is, turning the conflict of limited life, kill or be killed, into something that builds instead. It's like the men Montag meets outside the city, nomads who read books, memorize them, and then burn them so they can never be found out. They fill the silence, hold it, pass it on, test it against others' knowledge to form a consensus, 1 cell of the same body, 1 billion limited capacities simulating infinity with a library across the country, all formed by people who have to share to know it. There's no answer, but that's why we have to keep looking. That's why we have a duty to embrace that tension which holds us together and be 1 cell of that body, so that no one can ever do it without us, ever think they have an answer, and turn this into violence. Kinos' Journey is one of those almost obscure classic anime. Not a name drop that'll get the whole room smiling for a moment, but one to get a couple people smiling for the whole night. The title is literal, following Kino as they visit a different country each episode, only ever remaining for 3 days. What we're concerned with today is just one of those countries, the land of books. From the outside, it's a legendary place which collects literature from all across the world, an almost library of Babel. But witnessing the inside, Kino finds bare-bones shelves consisting mostly of children's books and manuals. It turns out they do take in books from everywhere, but most are banned, labeled by the critics in the castle as harmful and locked away. The danger, they say, is in how people get lost in fiction. As the librarian is arrested for,
she has equated herself with a character in a book. She couldn't tell the difference between reality and illusion.
Not performing her societal duties, but rather acting as a revolutionary seeking to overthrow the castle, focusing on wild imaginations rather than practical matters. If everyone gets wrapped up in fiction, how is the world going to function? But as Kino does see an actual meeting of these revolutionaries, clearly something is amiss here. Thinking she is a character in a book is more or less code for becoming an individual. After all, if this society is one which doesn't have a real concept of individuality, then individuality is effectively a part of fiction, the quality not of a real person, but of a character. Quite simply, it's just different words for restriction. This does get at an interesting concept, though, because it doesn't negate the castle's concerns that this woman actually is a revolutionary. They are right that individualism, a changing self which is collected across time as we move from conditions we can't help to choices we do make, reduces social cohesion. It's as the author, the one writing the books the revolutionaries read and publish, explains.
Your life begins when you make a distinction between yourself and others.
You're born and you're quite blank. You've only experienced birth, something common to all people, so, well, you're pretty much the same. But then you're put into your parents' arms, and, well, that changes. Yes, almost everyone experiences that, but not with the same arms, not with the same intent or looking up at the same face. And then you get taken home to a different house with different things, your parents working different jobs, and you slowly get set into a niche of your situation. One child's parents yell at them for asking why too much, and others calmly explain the questions instead. Suddenly, the same action, asking why, has 2 totally different connotations in these individuals. They each hear the same word, but it doesn't mean the same thing. The world appears the same outside, but inside, well, it is entirely different, which this leads to misunderstandings, which is conflict. However, within the same town, a closed-off country like this with seemingly quite harsh rules, things are going to remain mostly the same because everyone is picking from the same few options. You can only desire that which you are aware of, so your desires remain well within those walls. But then, a book from the outside comes in. And it's not even fiction, it's just an account of some other place. And suddenly, you know that another place exists. You read it, and you have a piece of that within you, an experience which is detached from your surroundings. And maybe it's a book from the past, so it's detached from your time too. And it talks about different people, so it's detached from your looks. Fiction is the extreme version of this, a literally unreal world that, if written well enough, makes us feel like a part of it. Without ever leaving our room, without giving up anything but time, we gain experiences which disconnect us from here and now. Maybe even from all times and all places in a fantasy world, places that could never even exist, yet we care for them and their events like they do. With the birth of vivid imagination, misunderstanding is turned up to 11, because everyone has not just a different view of the world, but hundreds of different worlds within them. This is what they fear. A society which cannot function efficiently because the objective world is tainted subjectively for all people. There is some correct fear in this because individualism can be a self-serving cycle. As the author explains it, there is one conclusion derived from it.
From that moment, the world becomes the stage for the story in which you are the main character.
Because how could you not be? Your experiences are distinct from everything around you. You know yourself to be a full, complicated person, witnessing yourself and your logic at all times, while everyone else is a blur, passing actions that only exist for a brief moment and only while you observe them, as far as you know. But everyone is undergoing this at once, and within a space of inherent limitation, which means
The world, cruel as it is, denies you that role of the main character.
we may be able to read of places far away, but we can't actually just open a door and go there. We may be able to hear of grand adventures, but if everyone adventures, where is the food to fuel them? Society is limiting because the world is inherently limited. Whether or not the systems which are imposed on us are true to the universe or not, they mimic its guiding principle and are true to us as we experience. So, is having something that makes us more like the main character in a world where they simply can't happen a good thing? Or is it kind of dangerous? As this seeming agent of the castle says,
Some books out there entice with radical descriptions or plant dangerous thoughts in people's minds.
in a way, fiction is a crime against reality, and it convinces us to commit itself. It detaches us from the world in a way that impedes on others as we all logically seek to be the main character. It gives us desires that can never be fulfilled. It gives us knowledge that we can't apply here and so much more. It makes reality unsatisfying. Isn't that dangerous? So you escape into fiction even more because it makes reality less satisfying each time. We become more and more like the character and less like our situation. So we gravitate towards that which now feels real to us, which is the unreal world of the books. We lose sight of what's true and what isn't. As the author says, what if reality is that this is a book and you are merely the characters? You escape into fiction to become yourself, but in doing so lose your grip on where you actually are. And if this happens to enough people, reality itself is gone and no one can even escape into it because they've never emerged from it. Everything collapses. So the country has an interesting solution to this. Use the problem against itself. Make the people who read books hate books. The punishment for those who read illegal works, like the librarian, is actually to be taken into the castle and turned into one of the critics performing the judgment, to take a wide range of literature and judge it as something simple, harmful or harmless. And that gets to the heart of what review, of what being a critic is. Taking something subjective and making it objective. The goal is to communicate a score, to tell someone whether or not they should engage with this thing, right? To do that, you need something consistent, a series of standards which can apply to all works and remain the same, so that everyone can agree on those few words to describe the ones they don't agree on. Review is a form of distillation, looking for the few immutable qualities and how they compare to the others. I mean, after all, if you only have 2 books, one is always going to be harmful and the other not, because those are the extremes of the scale. But you add in a couple more and not so much. I mean, what are those middle? Are they harmful, harmless? Are they harmless, harmful? Do you just lump both to the sides? And then you add an armful more books and, well, it's even murkier. I mean, really, where is the line now? Where does one suddenly swap into the other? You keep going until you realize that all you're doing is building from one original flawed but still subjective point, that there is no good or bad and no line between them, just how they compare, and what you use to determine that is entirely itself dependent on the context of the work, because what worked in one didn't work in the other one, and you never have an answer. Take it from someone who quit making reviews for a reason. You realize there is no way to really do it. There are too many complexities to ever be objective. The sense of consistency these former revolutionaries had, especially because they were reading all books from the same person, has entirely dropped away as they're now reading things written by anyone, anywhere. They lose a sense for what's good and what isn't. They see how many different opinions contradict each other, times and places going against one another, and they only come away confused. And if you can't find the line between, and you must find one, then you have to make it one of the extremes. The critics become horrible people, essentially torturing the works that come past them and deeming all of them harmful, because that is the only way to accomplish this task of objectifying things. And going with all bad is the most beneficial to the observer, because that speaks something good about them in comparison. If they can know what's special, if they can do that, then they must be special themselves. If they know what's wrong, then they must be right. Especially because it makes them better than the author of the book. They need hundreds of pages to craft a world, but the critics damn the entire thing with just a few sentences. They pit themselves against what they once loved, coming up with an answer that maintains their sense of self in the overwhelming flow of questions. The only books that survive to the general public are the ones that say simple, underwhelming, objective truths, kids' books, and manuals. Society loses their access to the worlds outside themselves, and control is achieved. But clearly their solution isn't right, as they stopped short. People only turn to escapism when the world refuses to acknowledge them. Yes, fiction makes us dissatisfied with it, but just as we make the chimera, fiction is born from reality. It is what we believe the world could be. So long as the world can change, fiction will not detach us from it. And the world has to change. Eventually, the author is taken into the castle and, springing his trap, burns all of the books inside. When he does so, he remarks,
"The world is a prison. Everything is an imaginary cage."
I think this is to the meaning that the world is a fiction that can change. The imaginary cages are the false consistency we provide to it. Take a town, that place where the child was born and limited by. Towns exist as we perceive them. They are things, but they are creature-made things. Animals didn't emerge into the wild and find a series of huts and go, "Oh, that's a great idea." No, they worked their way through the information they found and decided that it would be a good idea to group together to prevent harm. Then that walls would help keep them safer. You don't need to keep watch anymore. Then that a name could communicate where you are to the others, and then that they could trade between all of those names. All of this impacts our lives, but that doesn't mean it is inherent to the world. If we make ourselves beholden not to limitation, but to specific limitations, then we are in imaginary cages. Really, these things are just a fiction someone else wrote and other people accepted. And now it's so old we believe it's wise, whether that's true or not. So when we think we have an answer is when the problem arises, when we take the subjective and solidify it like they did with the critics, making people who believe they are right. We want people to disagree, because then they take their subjective idea and test it against another. They pick pieces off and try to find them as their own. They adapt and evolve them, leading to something proven, something more inclusive, something with the importance of two, not just one. It's not about who's right, but about what direction we think right might be in. And we get it wrong, and we're dissatisfied, but that means we just have the fuel to do it again, so long as we're a bit angry, a bit dissatisfied, searching for something that doesn't actually exist, so that we never reach an end and turn right into war. The point is that it makes no sense, that you can't objectify it to kill over it. And this is why the author's last book is the book of everything. In a predictably cheesy reveal, one with no words. It is everything because it is what you yourself imagine. But that is the point. A framework, a suggestion, the mental tuning to imagine something which remixes reality, and then the task of having to put it down, create the words yourself. To take what you've experienced, the character you've become, and solidify it just enough to throw it into the ring. The book of everything is what society is meant to be. The framework to us to write our stories. The limitation of the covers, but the freedom to fill them. Our task is to always be fighting over what words are written, and we only do that with the subjective mess. So, we've now talked about a fundamental piece of 20th century literature and an obscure philosophical anime. So clearly the next thing on the list is a modern rhythm game, Unbeatable. Yeah, I didn't think anyone was expecting this. I wasn't expecting this. But it raises some interesting points about why things are banned, and questions what actually constitutes a ban in the first place. To start, well, it's a world where music is illegal and you commit crimes.
Goosebumps. The right shivers.
Harmony and Resonance Management, has banned music in response to the murder of Quaver's mother, Eve, a famous musician killed on stage during the farewell performance, as this moment saw the emergence of the Silence, monsters which come about when music is played, and appear to have destroyed the whole area surrounding the stadium. This doesn't seem to be all of the time. Quaver says she's played music by herself and never seen them, and many people in this world still engage in illegal music, but the silence are supposedly possible no matter how alone or quiet the sound is. Harm bans music as prevention, becoming an oppressive police state with black sites and constant abuses of power, as we witness when Beat and Quaver, the main characters, try to break treble and clef, two prodigy musician twins, out of one of those sites and just get caught themselves and subjected to fights and a lot of labor. In a world that's still mostly run down, Harm is new and shiny with their tower, well, towering above the city. Always there, always watching, always doing better than the individual. But is anything ever as it seems in a good story? Sforzando, Harm's lead researcher, describes the true nature of the silence as such.
They're not anything, Beat. They're literally nothing. They are holes in the world.
The name is literal. The gaps where nothing exists, where each person can perceive something different since nothing is actually there. Their emotions. So they're not a consequence of music, but music is simply the most dangerous amplifier of them, the most raw, the most subjective, spreadable way to feel. Think about it. When a song makes us feel something, words that connect with us or a sound that takes our mind somewhere specific, is that something we do according to our will, or like the breeze, just happening to us? You don't choose to have a song speak to you. It just does, and you kind of can't explain why. That's the danger. It makes us irrational. It takes our conscious choices and shelves them for our unconscious feelings, sweeps away the careful nature we all coat ourselves in. And this is happening for every single person at the same time, since the silence depends on the observer. For example, guns don't actually do anything to empty space in the universe. But they don't tell the harm agents this, and so the guns do work because they think the guns will work. What this means isn't just that we're all unique, but that you can't understand and prevent the danger of uniqueness since you can't accurately predict it. How do you understand something that changes from you observing it? In thinking about the thing, I'm filling the space with something. So the thing becomes something. The space around the shape vanishes. For Sando has spent years trying to understand them and can't, because there is no definite thing to actually understand. No human reacts exactly the same. And it goes even further because music itself is an expression, right? It's something like taking a feeling and making something out of it, filling the space. So what's causing all of this is one person doing so, which then gets to other people, so it's people influencing people, which means it's not only against our will, but each person who it happens to against their will then becomes another person who can spread it, since they can create it. This is why she says to beat, as she and the band have begun to play illegal shows.
You put so many people in danger. The energy you put into the world just wants to feed itself, Beat.
Because one person says it, someone else hears it, they say something else, more hear it, it goes, it spreads, no one can stop it, no one can predict it as it constantly changes shapes, morphs, and at its worst, destroys the order we rely on like it did that night. This silence, our emotions, are destructive and chaotic because they're the irrational part of us simply given form. We can't help but do it. Just like Treble and Clef, who've been arrested many, many times but keep performing, keep expressing anyway. They say,
this shit it's in us, in a way that you don't get out of you. Because if we're being honest with ourselves, music is like, it's the closest thing we can get to there being proof that God exists.
That last line is the most telling. If we follow the logic that God is what we can't explain, that it's the origin of sorts, it's basically an exercise like Aristotle performed when finding out what the good is. Trace every motivation you feel back a step, and keep going at each turn, and where do you end up? It's always one place. Because I want to. We end at something we can't explain but feel compelled towards anyway, just as Clef can't give a reason, but says they have to make music anyway. They don't do it for a benefit, they don't do it to get something else, they just do it because. The lack of explanation is the explanation. To search for meaning is simply the function of a human being. To borrow a line from Michael Stevens, I think our niche as a species is that we make meaning just like bees make honey. We take stuff, we take information from the universe, just like bees take nectar, and we go, this could be sweeter, and we discard a bunch of stuff. The bees dry out that nectar until they've got just this really, really sweet honey. And we take in all this information and we discard stuff until we've just got this meaningful thing. So, you don't ban something to prevent this. You ban something because the act of enforcing the ban becomes how people find meaning. Something much less emotional, much more definite. You give them rules instead of rhythms, rigid structures which provide a clear path, which imply right and wrong, which, like the tower they're housed within, feels solid in a way that art never can. This is the real function of harm seen in its department heads. Take Crest, a younger, naive man who quickly became one of them. He seems to be well-meaning and personable enough, quite nervous about, well, anything. One of the few characters not moving to a rhythm, puffing himself out like a cornered cat, he wants to do good in the world. But when everything is subjective, well, how do you do good? When each situation takes a day of thought, how do you do right? This is why he says about his job,
I felt stuck where I am. Because I'm worried I can't do anything just being a normal guy.
He didn't really want to throw people in an overcrowded jail. It seems like he's constantly forcing himself based on that stance, but someone told him this was the way to keep people safe. It's an action that can be measured, that has results by which someone can say, you did good, you helped people, in a way that something vague like music just doesn't get so easily. Where art searches for a way, harm picks one and just moves forward no matter how wrong it is. It becomes the thing that lets regular guys feel like they can make a difference because it is forcefully changing the world, abusing that human desire for meaning. But it never actually fulfills it, as we see in his breakdown. It just numbs one to the feeling until they eventually explode. Take Poco and Apoco, the harm propagandists. They're the ones behind what you see in the background of the game, and I think one of those posters is more telling than the rest. Music was niche, harm is for everyone. On the surface, you can see how this would also pull in someone like Crest, but as we covered earlier, when something is for everyone, it's for no one. It loses all of its texture, all of its risk and ability to be praised for something specific, but also its ability to be criticized, and that's where these two fall into it. They are creative, they enjoy what they do, but they're afraid of doing it in a way where they could fail, where if they reach for someone specific, they could fail to actually grab them. So they reach for no one at all. They revoke the meaning from their own work, making it the pleasurable emotions, but none of the actual substance.
This isn't some deep-seated self-expression. We make commercials.
By being a part of something huge and forceful like this, you lose real meaning, but you get to perform the actions as if you had it forever. But just like Crest, it doesn't truly satisfy them. As they finally admit,
We don't do this for ourselves. We make something else shinier and move on. The shine is a part of us.
take DC, the investigator who you deal with in prison. He's similar to Crest, but instead of worrying about how to live the right kind of life, he's simply worried about living life. He doesn't want to wake up and choose what right and wrong are. He wants to choose one thing and do it forever. As he says,
This isn't about if you think the lie's right. This is about you breaking it.
it doesn't actually matter to him if harm is doing good. It just matters that it is consistent, that it is forceful and backed up and won't go away, won't change and leave him without that persistent purpose. So he backs the organization that can put a massive tower up in record time because that is a show of ever-present force, a constant reminder that they are watching and can't be escaped. Eternal harm. He hates beat in the music the band makes, not because of what it says, but just because it says something, creates an option, and as such questions power just by existing. In his ideal world, harm would never change. Nothing would ever change. But that's why he's left alone, yelling in a void instead of being helped like the others. Never change, and life leaves you behind. So we see that you can give people another purpose, but that, as always, this is flawed. They can never be satisfied without that unknown deep down. Which is why our world doesn't institute such harsh bans most times, but soft ones. If you make one option extremely difficult, almost impossible to pursue, and another much easier, much simpler, not through any natural inclinations, but through your meddling, have you effectively banned the former without having to say you did? The world we witness in Unbeatable is not a real one, but the imagination of Beatrice. Her mother died of cancer after a long, expensive battle, her life is a mess, and the one good thing, her band, has just kicked her out for not having it, and not being pretty enough. Running away as she hears the song she used to sing in someone else's voice, she's struck by a car and knocked out, dreaming up this world while she is. Everything we witness is a representation of how she feels about the real world, ours. And so harm is the feeling that the world has already banned music. So, has it? From here on out, it's going to be messier, I think, but let's just go for it. The idea is that if you objectify the world as people can engage with it, can they actually find enough subjectivity to reflect in creation? The way you do that is by stripping away outlier cases. Beat's mother died of cancer. The chance that a woman in the US will die of cancer is about 16%, but most of that risk comes in later ages, meaning diet to it before 65 is quite rare. It isn't a common case, and that's exactly why it sucks so much, because the world is built for the average healthy person. It's built around not having to run between the hospital and work and everything else, because there is no everything else when you already have those first two. Why doesn't Beat have it with regards to talent? Why is she always late? Because she has to make it do a terrible job between hospital visits and stress and medical debt that eats up rent money and makes her have to work more and sleep less to be able to practice, and we know that she doesn't sound as good when she's tired. Literally no one does. Her situation needs a subjective eye to be equitable, to not be forced into the average framework but taken as it is. They shouldn't have to pay for all of this, and in some way Beat should be able to work less to have time for family. Anyone who actually looked at this situation would agree that's what would make her a more productive member of society. But no one is looking because the rules say not to. The rules say it has to either be A or B, and you just make it fit because that's the regulation. The stripping of subjectivity, making life black and white when it never is. This is the point of the tower built by the debt of people just like them, the massive structure with a company logo at the top. It's taking a desire, someone who wants to be the best and solidifying it, making it no longer abstract and personal, but imposing it on everyone with a physical structure. How can you doubt them when something this big blocks your way, when you can see it even when you leave the city, even among all the other buildings? Everyone has different values, different tastes. On subjective matters like music, we cannot agree. But scale? We all have a sense of scale. We all know which building is the bigger one. Whether I respect or pity the man at the top of the tower, I still must know it's large. And when these are our surroundings, when everything is made into an object instead of an idea, what are we supposed to do with the same thing? Born into a solid world, we start to seek out solid things, turning away from art into simple items, because as far as we know, it just feels natural surrounded by all of this. It becomes about production then, not what you are doing, but what is being produced from what you're doing. What will I be able to hold when you are done? And then this gets turned on us because it's so much simpler, and because we accept it as natural to avoid painful complexity. We start to think that we have to produce because the world is a bunch of physical objects, so it's only right that everyone should work a crappy job and add to the pile of objects, isn't it? We start to measure people by only this and blame them when they try to do anything else, treating expression as a moral failing. As his sister says when Beat is focusing on other things than work, like her band,
What other things? There should be no other things.
it's the assumption that the only thing she can be doing in there is rotting away, that there's one way and nothing else is worthwhile. Is she living an unhealthy life in some ways? Yes. But can we trace the roots of that back to a world that never cared for her outlier case? Yes. There's nuance. But so long as harm gives everyone an objective world to partake in, we pretend not to notice. We end up with a world where subjectivity doesn't exist because no one is willing to see it. And so, is creativity not somewhat banned in a world like that? When you don't have the time to create, is it really allowed? When you don't have the energy, is it really allowed? When you don't have the emotional capacity, is it allowed? When you get blamed for doing it, is it allowed? You can ban something without actually ever saying you have banned it. The good, and the bad though, is that something like this is always doomed to fail. Because you can't quantify something which is changing, so an objective world must be stagnant, and, well, a stagnant world is a dead one. Everything they feel is still there, it's still ready to fill the silence, but without the ability to be expressed, it just festers. Numb, but you still feel it crawling under the skin. You threw it all away, but it stays the same. This is what happens with Beat and Quaver, both dealing with the death of a mother, and as they discuss, more or less growing numb to it, because they never had the ability to deal with it, the time to do so or the music to find and mourn that connection. It just goes on and slowly stops feeling like anything, even though it's always still there. They live their lives on autopilot, each day passing without choice, without their own input, until one day down the line, it's too large to ignore. Triggered by that last straw breaking the back, and they recognize it and see just how much time was wasted. That they've become more and more nothing because
my mom took up all the space in the world without even trying. And when she died, all of that space was suddenly filled with nothing. And that's a lot of nothing.
That's the disaster. The moment where we finally see the silence as empty space. Because you've built your life from that moment. And how does anything stand on a moment of nothing that's just undealt with, empty? The rest falls apart. The world starts to be consumed by a literal nothing, and there seems to be little way to stop it. The people are rebelling against harm, all the order is falling apart, and everything that was held back comes forth, turning people into shadows, the empty space they never filled finally taking over all of them. For Sando, the only person who understood the silence, says there's no way to stop it. But Beat finds one, the only thing they could ever do. Feel it. Use these tools, music, to amplify and understand the feeling, to put time and effort and energy to it, to spread it and make it large, and once that exhausts them, to let it pass actively instead of passively, to run it through oneself so much that they get sick of it, to make something of it so that it gains a new form, and to spread that to other people so it stays alive. We deal with it without dealing with it. We change its shape because life is change. That's music. That's art. Changing a feeling's shape. It becomes what we do next as we shift its form, making it open and interpretable to the others. It spreads out, stops meaning so much to us because now it means something to everyone. This is what they do in finishing the performance that got started that night. The moment everyone wasn't able to move on from, the one so powerful and made emotions physical, created the silence. They fill it, they change its shape, make it finally able to pass. The void subsides, and the world is saved by finally breathing, being itself, being subjective. Beat returns to the world, wakes up, and sends an email to the college she dropped out of to re-enroll with her old credits. She can finally move forward because that weight has been transformed into something easier to carry, something others help with and will keep alive. It's the same, but different. Still as important, but not as heavy. Isn't that what a song is to an emotion? Isn't that what art is to us? And that will wrap things up for this one. You can probably tell that this video was a lot more work presentation-wise than I normally do, and that's something I want to keep moving forward. So let me know if that's something you liked, whether that's with a dedicated comment, letting me know, or just like a like, or if it's within 7 days of this video going up, hype, which you get 3 free of those a week, I think, so I'd really appreciate those. They do really help out videos in that new system. Just so I can get a gauge for if that was something that added to the video, as well as, transparency. It helps the video do better. Of course, that's why people on YouTube ask for you to do those things. But it does give me a gauge for, is this something you want to see again? It does give me a gauge for, should I ask for that at the end of videos? Will that have an impact? So it helps me keep doing what I want to do and what you want from me without having to worry so much about the, quote, business side of it. So it does very much help there. So with that already said, what are your favorite worlds with banned media? What's the other ones that you would want me to cover that you have some take on that you can share down below? Because obviously all the transparency stuff already said, I do like to see that because you adding something is what makes it a discussion and not just me ranting at my walls in my room alone. So all the comments and things do help, and I try to make it my goal to get back to as many as I can and read them all because again, it just is something that I think is very important about all of this. I don't want it to just be my voice. There should be more information below. Speaking of more information below, there are links to anything I research in the pinned comment as always, as well as links to Discord and Patreon and channel membership, the last two being financial support, where you get videos a little bit early and I ask for some insight every now and then. It's exceptionally important right now, and I don't mention it as much as I should, but that's one of those things, as you've heard again and again from YouTubers, that moving forward is the lifeblood of being able to do what we do, because it is predictable income against a very unpredictable system. So I need to get better about mentioning that, because it is very important, and you get your name at the end of videos like this. But to everyone, financial support or not, new viewer or long-time subscriber or whatever, thank you for spending some time here with me today. This is an important topic that I wanted to cover. So, thanks for watching, and I hope I'll see you again soon.